Welcome back. I'm Sam, and this is where I'm kind of starting the process of building a personal brand and just documenting it along the way. One thing I often run into with personal branding, and I hear this in my own mind, and I also hear this from other people, is that people are already saying what I want to say. And this might be true, but there's still something unique about my own voice and about your own voice that would connect with certain people. And the reason I really believe this to be true is because of another YouTube channel that I've built called Living in Tampa. This YouTube channel is focused on helping people understand the Tampa area, and it's my real estate business. It's how I get leads for my real estate business. And this actually resonates really well with people. And it resonates in all kinds of ways, but typically people that like me end up reaching out to me. People that like me end up subscribing to my YouTube channel. And I'm not alone in this platform in terms of Tampa real estate channels. Whenever I started my channel in January of 2021, there were about 20 other channels doing the same thing. I still started it and gained some traction somewhat easily by following very specific tried and true paths to getting things recognized on YouTube and then being very consistent in publishing content. This channel follows a very specific equation, which is really content marketing. Number one, I'm adding value. So I'm thinking of questions that people might have, or thinking of questions that I've had, or things that I'm confused about the Tampa area. And then I'm trying to add some clarity to those questions. I might not always have the answer that people are looking for, but I have one answer that they might be willing to consider. And by providing that answer, I am adding some value to them. And then, so that's the first thing I'm doing, adding value. And then second, I'm asking for business. Every single time, the beginning of every video, at the end of every video, I'm asking people to contact me. I'm asking people to subscribe. So that's a very specific approach, and content marketing is a big business. I mean, people do content marketing in all kinds of ways, and even some of my competitors that I compete with in the Tampa real estate content space are not all realtors. Some of these are like pod storage or moving companies or all kinds of companies that kind of loosely connect to that industry, and they often have blogs that do really well. I even use some of their content and turn it into videos because I don't always know the area as well as a local would. So I'm doing a lot of research on the front end to provide content in video form. So this kind of strategy is very specific. It works really well. I know that there's an audience out there for each person if they're willing to create the content and willing to engage with an audience in a sincere and honest way. I think something that sets me apart a little bit in that genre is that I'm very casual and sincere. I try to avoid being salesy. I don't have a lot of sales experience, so it's pretty easy for me to avoid being salesy. But people even tell me that it's because of my approach that they reach out to me. And those are the kind of people that I want to work with, the people that are noticing that I'm trying to not be like a salesman in that way, and they realize that I'm trying to add value instead, and that still leads to sales. So it's still salesy in a way, but it's a little different. Another thing that kind of debunks the idea of people are already doing it or people are already saying what I want to say is just the ratio of consumers to creators. And when I say creators, I don't necessarily mean like the big content creators that we think of. I more mean anybody that's using these platforms in an intentional way, and they're creating content that adds value, that is searchable, all those kind of things. So the threshold to be a creator is very low, and anyone can become a creator right now. So I think this ratio of creator to consumer actually keeps getting bigger and bigger. Initially on these platforms, people came on and created content, and it had a very personal feel. Now people are using these platforms to grow businesses, to build audiences, to sell things, and also to share their personal life. But this ratio of creator to consumer, I think, is getting bigger and bigger as people are comfortable consuming this content daily on multiple different platforms. most people consume and don't create. And then even more, most people that consume do not create intentionally. So if they do create, it's for a very small audience. It's for their family and friends. They're sharing their life. And they're not actually trying to engage an audience in an intentional way. So across all these platforms, I'm asking, which should I make content for specifically? Of course, I'm making content for YouTube right here. This is a personal channel for me, and I also have a business channel on YouTube. When it comes to the other platforms, I'm not quite as comfortable. And maybe that's because I'm not as familiar with those platforms. So some that I think are very important, I think Instagram is very important because it is where we often search for people. You know, if somebody comes across me, comes across my work, I think they're often going to Instagram to see what I'm like, what my life is like. So I think Instagram can be kind of an unfiltered look at someone's life. And there's something that's really fun about that. And I think that can still talk about business, or it can still say new video out on my channel, check it out. It could still say new merch coming out. It can still sell, but I think it is a more unfiltered look at someone's life and lets a potential customer get to know you a little bit. So Instagram, I think, has to be utilized. Facebook, I'm really uncomfortable on, mostly because I don't quite understand what Facebook is trying to do. It does have really interesting community aspects, like groups, that it really kind of does well. But I think for the most part, Facebook can just be a copy of my Instagram. I'm okay with that because I don't really want to go onto that platform very much. I've always been uncomfortable with Twitter because I feel like there's this pressure to be like witty or funny, or to say things that are very polished and meaningful. Maybe it doesn't have to be that. It seems like a lot of the people that I would want to connect with in similar industries as me, or that have similar aspirations as me, are connecting with people on Twitter very often. And you can kind of find your own little community in the midst of this platform. That's really interesting to me. That's intriguing, not just to find an audience, but to find a community and to find peers in the midst of what I'm trying to do. So I think I want to use Twitter more as a way to connect with other similar people as opposed to connecting with an audience. Okay, TikTok is something that I haven't considered at all. I haven't even downloaded the app, haven't considered creating an account on TikTok, mostly because I use social media very intentionally. I don't really have any time in the day where I want to be scrolling on my phone. And it seems like TikTok is really good at keeping you on the phone. And I don't really want that. So, but it is a platform that is becoming very, very important. And as people are starting to use it more to engage an audience, they are adding value. And it's not just entertainment value, but it's all kinds of value. So it probably should be utilized. I should at least create an account and capture a username, which we'll talk about usernames in just a minute. Another one is a website, a personal website, which I think is important because I do want to be publishing some writing. And even if that's just my videos in written form, I like this kind of medium, and I'd like to develop even like a newsletter audience where, maybe I send out a weekly newsletter that is, some, 5 things that I saw that I liked, or some of my thoughts about something that's going on. I like that kind of an idea, but I also like the idea of kind of curating things that I'm seeing, or things, maybe something that I bought that I really like, and making those kind of recommendations. I've always been kind of that curator for my friends, and I really enjoy the process of, discovering a new product or service and seeing how it applies to my situation. So I like sharing that kind of experience. Let's start kind of getting into usernames. For my website, I own samcottle.com and samuelcottle.com, but I don't really go by Samuel. I had this point in my life where I really wanted to go by Samuel, and it just didn't really stick. And it became kind of obnoxious that I was always trying to tell people to call me Samuel instead of Sam, and I just kind of gave up. And also, when people hear me on the phone, they think Daniel with a D, because that's a little more common of a name than Samuel. Sometimes even when I say Sam, they hear Dan, or all kinds of different things like that. But then my usernames on other platforms are not that consistent because I haven't really cared. So on Instagram, it's Samuel Caudle. On Facebook, it's Samuel Caudle. On Twitter, it's the Sam Caudle. And I've found some articles about how to capture another Twitter username if the user is inactive. So I think I can capture Samuel Caudle or Sam Caudle, but then if I capture Sam Caudle, then it doesn't match my other ones. So I think it's best for me to try to capture Samuel Caudle on Twitter so that it matches my Instagram, which will be my other main platform that I'm using. On YouTube, your username doesn't matter quite as much. My channel name is Samuel Caudle, so I'm just kind of keeping that consistent with the others. And for my website, I can kind of use both, but I have an email set up with samcaudle.com, so I might just kind of leave the website like that. But when it comes to capturing this Twitter username, I think I need to be more active on Twitter to make my case. So pretty much what you're doing is you're saying, this is my account. You're saying my account is right here and I want this account. This person is impersonating me. And it seems like they do kind of honor this if the account is inactive. So Samuel Caudle is currently inactive. There's never been a tweet on it. So I'm trying to do like a daily tweet on the Sam Caudle so that I can then appeal in a few weeks to get Samuel Caudle. And I'll make a video kind of about those steps to see just how it goes. Okay, let's just kind of wrap this up with this point that none of this matters if I'm not creating valuable content. So we got to ask ourselves hard questions about what kind of content we want to create and what kind of value we want to add to an audience. So since I'm often looking for content that will inspire me to create content, that's the kind of where I want to focus my attention. And maybe it's not creating content. Maybe it's more just inspiration in general to do something that you want to do, whether that's mental, physical, business, relational, and that kind of growth space. And growth is something that I do care a lot about, probably more than a lot of people. I just kind of recognize that it's something that maybe I care about more than most of my peers do or most of my family does. And that's okay. I think it's important to acknowledge what we care about and not necessarily have to defend it and let ourselves care about it as much as we are able, because it's when we do care about something so much that we're able to pursue it with a lot of our energy. All right, so next week we'll start getting into themes of content. I want to kind of think through some questions and start sharing how I'm thinking through what kind of content to make and how to use these platforms more intentionally, and find some people that I admire and see how they are using these platforms. Thanks for coming by. I'll see you next week.